When Sophia Aldridge bought a forgotten island, everyone laughed. They called it worthless, just a lonely rock beaten by waves and storms. But beneath those cliffs, hidden in the silence of centuries, lay a secret that would change everything. What she uncovered was not just treasure buried in the rocks, but a legacy of sacrifice, courage, and history that the world had nearly forgotten. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. The first time Sophia Aldridge saw the listing, she almost scrolled past it. Just a single photo, a windswept rock in the middle of a forgotten bay captioned with 3 words, "Property for sale." Most people would have laughed, dismissing it as worthless, just another piece of land no one wanted. But Sophia wasn't most people. At 42, after 2 decades of grinding as an urban planner in Boston, she was restless. Her life, though successful on paper, felt hollow. She longed for something different, something bold, something that would shake the dust off her soul. The ad described it as a secluded island, uninhabited, no infrastructure, no guarantee of utility. In other words, a nightmare for anyone sane. But to Sophia, it whispered possibility. The photo showed jagged cliffs clawing at the sea, a ribbon of sand where waves kissed the shore, and behind it all, a crown of ancient rock. It wasn't paradise. It was forgotten. And perhaps that's why she couldn't look away. Against all advice, Sophia liquidated her savings, signed the papers, and bought it. An island no one remembered, an island no one wanted. But as she stepped off the boat for the first time, the silence wrapped around her like a secret, and she had no idea how deeply that secret would change her life forever. For the first week, Sophia wandered the island in wide-eyed silence. She slept in a canvas tent she pitched near the shore, the ocean waves her lullaby, and the cries of distant seabirds her morning alarm. Every step she took felt like an introduction to an old soul. There were twisted trees clinging to the cliffs, rock formations like broken teeth rising out of the earth, and faint trails etched into the ground as if footsteps from centuries ago had left their marks. But it was the quiet that unnerved her most. No hum of electricity, no chatter of neighbors, no traffic groaning in the distance, only the raw sound of wind and waves. At first, it felt freeing. Then it became heavy, as though the silence carried secrets. On her 10th day, the storm rolled in. It wasn't the kind of storm that politely announced itself. The sky blackened within minutes. The sea turned violent, and rain lashed her small tent until she thought it would tear apart. Thunder shook the cliffs, lightning illuminated the shoreline. And for a brief moment, she swore she saw something glinting in the rocks. When the storm finally broke, Sophia stumbled outside, soaked to her bones, her heart still racing. The beach had changed. Where the storm had ripped away layers of sand and stone, something unusual protruded. At first, it looked like driftwood, but as she brushed away the wet sand, her fingers found cold iron. She knelt, digging with trembling hands until the outline revealed itself, timbers blackened by time, fused with rusted bolts. A shipwreck! Sophia froze, staring at the fractured bones of what had once been a mighty vessel, now entombed beneath centuries of earth and tide. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just wreckage. This was history clawing its way back to the surface. The next morning, she returned with tools. At first, she thought it was foolish. What did she know about archaeology? But curiosity gripped her tighter than reason. She dug carefully, each handful of sand revealing more fragments, shards of pottery, a broken compass with its needle still quivering, the handle of a rusted cutlass. Each artifact whispered a story she couldn't yet understand. And then she found the coin. It was small, worn smooth around the edges, but the gold still gleamed through centuries of grime. Symbols she didn't recognize shimmered in the sunlight as she held it in her palm. Her hands shook. This wasn't trash from some forgotten fishing boat. This was treasure. Sophia sat on the sand for a long time, staring out at the horizon. The coin pressed against her chest. Suddenly, the weight of her reckless decision to buy this island on a whim shifted. She wasn't foolish. She wasn't lost. She was standing on something extraordinary. But it also terrified her. That night, she lit a fire and sat watching the embers crackle, the coin still in her hand. Questions tumbled through her mind. Who had sailed this ship? Why had it crashed here? And what else could be hidden in the rocks beneath her feet? She barely slept. Over the next few days, she cataloged everything she uncovered: rusted tools, pieces of ceramics, shards of glass bottles, and each night she whispered aloud to herself, "This is bigger than me." She knew she couldn't keep this secret, not forever. If she did, she risked damaging something priceless, something that belonged not just to her, but to history itself. With her phone's weak satellite connection, she typed out an email to a maritime historian she remembered hearing on a podcast months ago. The subject line read, "Possible 17th century shipwreck discovery need guidance." When she pressed send, she felt her stomach drop. Days later, an answer came. The historian, a man named Dr. Adrian Collins, wrote back almost immediately. "Your description is remarkable. If what you found is authentic, you may have stumbled upon one of the great maritime mysteries. I urge you not to move anything further until proper documentation can begin. I'll arrange a small team to join you as soon as possible." Sophia read the email 3 times, her pulse quickening with each word. She stared at the wreckage on the shore, the storm-scoured bones of the galleon whispering to her from beneath the waves. Her life had already changed the moment she signed those papers and bought the island. But now, staring at that ancient skeleton of a ship, she realized something deeper. She hadn't just purchased forgotten land. She had purchased a gateway to history, a story sealed beneath rock and water for centuries, waiting for her to uncover it. She looked down at the coin again, still gleaming faintly in her palm, and whispered to herself with trembling certainty, "This island chose me." When Dr. Adrian Collins finally stepped onto the island, Sophia felt the air shift. He wasn't the kind of man who wasted words. His gray-streaked beard and sharp eyes gave him the air of someone who had seen too much history to be easily impressed. But the moment he crouched by the exposed timbers and traced his hand along the weathered wood, his breath caught. "This isn't just any ship," he whispered, almost to himself. "This is old. Very old." Within days, his small team arrived archaeologists, divers, and conservationists, each with their own equipment and quiet sense of awe. Sophia watched them move across the beach with careful precision, their gloves brushing sand away from fragments she had unearthed with bare hands. For the first time, she felt both pride and fear. Pride, because she had discovered something that mattered. Fear, because it was no longer just hers. The team worked sunrise to sunset, recording, photographing, and logging every piece. And then came the breakthrough. One of the divers surfaced, water streaming off his suit, clutching a barnacle-crusted chest. It took 3 of them to drag it onto the shore. The wood groaned as the salt water dripped away. But the iron hinges still clung stubbornly to life. When they pried it open, the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside, beneath layers of silt and decay, gleamed rows of coins, gold and silver, stacked and scattered like frozen sunlight. The sight drew a collective gasp. Sophia dropped to her knees, tears stinging her eyes. It wasn't the money that shook her. It was the realization that she was kneeling before history, before lives lost and dreams buried beneath the waves. Dr. Collins spoke softly, reverently. This is from the Marauder's dream. Sophia blinked. The what? The Marauder's dream, he repeated, his voice hushed. A 17th century Spanish galleon, rumored to have vanished with a fortune in treasure and artifacts. Scholars debated whether it ever truly existed. And now, he trailed off, staring into the chest as though he were peering into legend itself. They found more over the following days, navigational instruments etched with delicate symbols, porcelain jars preserved in the sand, weapons rusted but unmistakably from another era. And then came the journal's fragments of leather-bound pages written in a hand that trembled with age. Dr. Collins pieced them together slowly, translating by lamplight as Sophia listened late into the night. The name appeared again and again, Captain Elias Navarro. His words painted a story more vivid than Sophia could have imagined. He wrote of storms that drove his ship toward unknown waters, of betrayal among his crew, of desperate nights when they anchored by a jagged island to survive. The journal spoke of hope, too, the hope of hiding their riches, preserving them until rescue came. But rescue never did. One night, as the wind howled through the trees, Sophia sat by the fire while Dr. Collins read aloud a final entry. If these words are ever found, let it be known we did not die cowards. We chose this place to keep safe what men of greed would squander. May those who discover it one day understand, not just the value of what lies buried, but the price we paid to guard it. Silence followed. The flames flickered across Sophia's face as her heart ached for men she had never known. Men who had poured their lives into safeguarding what now lay at her feet. But history has a way of drawing not only scholars, but predators. On the 4th week, a boat appeared on the horizon. At first, Sophia thought it was another research team. But as it drew closer, she noticed there were no flags, no markings, nothing official about it. The men who disembarked carried themselves with the wrong kind of confidence hands, calloused not from pens and brushes, but from fists and weapons. They approached with easy smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Word travels fast, Ms. Aldridge," their leader said, his tone almost casual. "An island, a shipwreck, a treasure worth more than anyone could count. We thought we'd come and help." Sophia's blood ran cold. She glanced at Dr. Collins, whose jaw tightened, his eyes betraying the same realization. These weren't researchers. They were scavengers men who saw only gold, not history. The team tried to reason with them, but the strangers laughed, brushing aside words of preservation and legality. They didn't care about museums or legacy. They cared about what glittered in the chest. That night, Sophia lay awake, the storm lantern flickering against the canvas of her tent. She heard their voices outside, rough, impatient, plotting. She knew the fragile bubble of discovery had burst. This wasn't just about uncovering the past anymore. It was about protecting it. Her uncle's warning from the journals echoed in her mind. May those who discover it understand, not just the value, but the price. And Sophia understood. The price was standing between greed and legacy, between ruin and remembrance. She clutched the gold coin she had first uncovered on the beach, the one that had started it all. Its weight felt heavier now, not just a piece of treasure, but a promise. A responsibility. As the waves crashed against the rocks outside, Sophia whispered to herself, steadying her resolve. I won't let them take this. Not while I'm still breathing. The intruders didn't waste time. By morning, they had forced their way into the excavation site, barking orders as if they owned the place. They pried at crates, scooped coins into sacks, and tossed aside fragile artifacts like worthless trinkets. Each crash of pottery made Sophia flinch. To them, this was nothing more than loot. Dr. Collins confronted them, his voice calm but firm. These pieces are priceless, centuries old. Mishandling them destroys their story. The leader sneered. Stories don't buy bread. Gold does. Sophia stood frozen, her fists clenched, her heart pounding. For the first time since arriving, the island felt hostile, violated. She had bought this land thinking it would heal her, give her quiet. Now it was a battlefield. That night, when the scavengers finally retreated to their boat anchored offshore, Sophia sat by the fire with Collins and the team. Their faces were pale, eyes shadowed with fear. One whispered, "We should leave. It isn't worth our lives." The words cut deep. Not worth our lives. Sophia stared into the flames, remembering the journal of Captain Elias Navarro, the man who had chosen this island as his final stand. His words echoed inside her like a heartbeat. May those who discover it understand. Not just the value of what lies buried, but the price we paid to guard it, hard. Suddenly, she understood. This wasn't about coins or jewels. It wasn't even about a sunken ship. It was about the souls who had entrusted this treasure to time, hoping one day it would be honored, not stolen. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried weight. If we leave, they'll strip this island bare. They'll erase every trace of history, and all this everything Captain Navarro and his crew preserved will be gone forever. Collins looked at her, his tired eyes searching hers. You can't fight men like that, Sophia. Not alone. Then I won't be alone, she replied. The next morning, she walked the length of the island with a notebook in hand. For the first time, she wasn't wandering aimlessly. She was planning. She marked the cliffs where natural caves could conceal crates, noted the tide pools that swallowed wreckage at high water, sketched paths only she knew through the jagged rocks. Her perspective shifted. She was no longer the outsider who had bought a forgotten island on a whim. She was its guardian. When the scavengers returned, they found less than they expected. Crates had vanished, buried beneath loose stone or hidden deep in caves only Sophia and Collins had mapped. Artifacts were gone from the shoreline, spirited away under the cover of night. The leader grew furious. He accused the team of hiding things, his voice sharp as the knives strapped to his belt. But Sophia stood firm, meeting his glare without flinching. "This island isn't yours," she said, her voice steady. "It never will be." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then he laughed, a sound as cruel as the crashing surf. "We'll see." That night, Sophia barely slept. The waves roared against the rocks, and every shadow outside her tent made her pulse race. But instead of despair, she felt clarity. Her old life had been about blueprints and deadlines, about carving order into sprawling cities. Here, there were no rules, no comforts, no guarantees, only her conviction. And for the first time in decades, her purpose felt alive. In the days that followed, she rallied the team not with force, but with belief. They dug smarter, moved faster, cataloged every artifact with precision. Each coin, each shard of pottery, was photographed and logged before being secured. Collins sent encrypted reports to his colleagues and even contacted government officials through a shaky satellite line. "If they try to claim it, we'll have proof," he said. But for Sophia, it wasn't about governments or ownership anymore. As she held Captain Navarro's journal close to her chest, she whispered a vow into the night. "I'll carry your story forward. I'll keep your sacrifice alive. What you guarded with your lives won't be lost to greed." And in that vow, something inside her shifted forever. No longer was this island a reckless escape from her past. It had become her destiny. She had come searching for peace, but found something greater, a reason to fight. Not with weapons, but with love, honor, and unshakable resolve. The scavengers would return. She knew that. The waves would crash, storms would rise, greed would always circle like vultures. But Sophia's perspective had changed. She wasn't a buyer of forgotten land anymore. She was its keeper. The morning after her vow, Sophia stood on the cliffs as the sun rose. The sea glimmered with streaks of gold, and for a moment, the island felt almost forgiving, as though it recognized her promise. She pressed Captain Navarro's journal to her chest and whispered, "We're not done yet." When Dr. Collins joined her, his expression was weary but determined. He held a satellite printout, a reply from an International Maritime Preservation Society. "They've agreed to send help," he said, "experts, funding, even security. But it'll take time." Sophia's heart pounded. This was the opportunity she hadn't dared to imagine, not just protecting the treasure, but sharing it, preserving it for the world to see. Yet, with the scavengers lurking offshore, time was the one thing they didn't have. She gathered the team that afternoon, around the fire, with the wind rattling the tent flaps. She spoke with a conviction that silenced the doubts in every heart. This isn't just about keeping thieves away. It's about creating something bigger than ourselves. If we succeed, this island will no longer be forgotten. It will become a sanctuary of history, a place where children can walk among relics, where scholars can study, where the world can learn what was nearly lost. For the first time since the intruders arrived, the team's faces lit with hope. They were no longer just digging up the past. They were building a future. The next weeks blurred into a flurry of work. Every dawn, they split into groups. Some cataloged artifacts, others reinforced makeshift shelters to store crates. Sophia coordinated tirelessly, her old skills as a planner resurfacing, but this time, every blueprint she sketched wasn't for a skyscraper or a highway. It was for preservation, for legacy. The more they uncovered, the clearer the vision became. There were coins from different empires, porcelain traced back to Asia, maps inked with seas long since redrawn. Each item carried not just value, but connection threads that tied forgotten sailors to the modern world. But the greatest discovery wasn't gold. One evening, as the tide receded, Sophia noticed a faint outline etched into the cliffside, a carving weathered almost smooth by centuries of wind and spray. With Collins' help, they cleared the moss, revealing an inscription in Spanish. It read, "For those who find this place, guard it as we did. Let it become more than what we lost. Let it become what we dreamed." Sophia's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. Captain Navarro and his crew hadn't just hidden treasure. They had left a plea, a vision for the island's future. That night, as the fire crackled, she shared the carving with the team. They didn't bury this gold to be stolen. They buried it to be remembered. They wanted this island to be more than a grave. They wanted it to be alive. Silence followed. Then Collins nodded. A living museum. The words sparked something electric. Plans began to spill out, restoring parts of the wreck to display safely, constructing paths where visitors could explore without disturbing fragile ruins, creating a research hub that would draw scholars from across the world. The idea of Isola Perduta, the living museum, was born. For Sophia, it was more than an idea. It was a calling. She wrote letters by lantern light, drafting proposals for grants, reaching out to universities, even composing speeches for officials she had never met. For the first time in years, her heart raced not with anxiety, but with purpose. And yet, the threat of the scavengers never disappeared. Their boat hovered like a vulture, waiting. Sometimes, at night, Sophia heard voices on the wind taunts carried across the water, but instead of breaking her resolve, it steeled it. They can take gold, she thought, but they'll never take a vision. As the weeks passed, word began to spread. Journalists caught whispers of a forgotten island with buried history. Universities sent inquiries. And one morning, Sophia received an email that made her tremble. We would like to propose a partnership to develop Isola Perduta into a global heritage site. It was real. The dream was no longer just hers. Standing on the beach that evening, Sophia let the waves wash over her feet. She thought of the woman she had been before, burned out, restless, empty. She thought of the island she had bought on impulse, mocked by others as a barren rock. And she thought of Captain Navarro, who had trusted the unknown future to carry his story forward. Now she knew this island wasn't just a refuge for her soul. It was an opportunity to transform history into legacy, to turn whispers of the past into a chorus that would echo for generations. The scavengers could circle as long as they wished. The world was already listening. Sophia smiled through tears, gazing at the horizon. What was forgotten, she whispered, will now be remembered. The threats escalated. By the 6th week, the scavengers had grown impatient. They no longer lingered quietly offshore. They prowled the beaches at night, leaving footprints in the sand, sometimes slashing open supply tents just to remind Sophia and her team that they were being watched. Fear hung over the camp like a storm cloud. One evening, Collins confronted her. Sophia, they're not going to wait forever. We're risking lives. She looked at him, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights, yet blazing with determination. I know. But if we give up now, everything Navarro dreamed of dies with us. And then came the night that tested her resolve beyond breaking. A storm rolled in again, wild, violent, almost biblical. The wind screamed against the cliffs, rain lashed the camp, and the sea churned black with fury. Amid the chaos, shouts pierced the gale. The scavengers had come. Sophia ran from her tent, the journal clutched against her chest as shadows moved through the rain. The men were tearing open crates, scooping coins into bags, their torches flickering like demons in the storm. One shoved Collins to the ground, his glasses shattering against the rocks. Another ripped open a canvas sack, spilling centuries-old porcelain into shards. Something inside Sophia snapped. She had always been the quiet one, the planner who measured twice and spoke once. But that night, she became fire. She grabbed a fallen torch, the flames whipping in the wind, and stood atop a rock, her voice cutting through the storm like thunder. "Stop!" she cried, her throat raw but unyielding. The men froze, startled by the ferocity in her voice. She raised the torch high, her hair plastered against her face by rain, her eyes burning. "This is not yours. This is not mine. This is history. And if you destroy it, you destroy yourselves." The storm howled around her, lightning slashing the sky, illuminating her figure like something out of legend. For a heartbeat, even the scavengers hesitated, shaken by the force of her conviction. One of them spat, "It's just gold." Her voice broke, trembling with both fury and grief. "It's not just gold. It's the last breath of sailors who died to protect it. It's the dream of a captain who wanted this island to mean something more. It's a story that belongs to the world, not thieves." Collins struggled to his feet, his voice hoarse. "She's right. You'll walk away, rich men, but history will remember you as nothing but vandals." The leader glared at Sophia, then at the storm-swept sea beyond. For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the hiss of rain on the flames. Then, with a curse, he shoved the coin sack into the mud. "Fine. Keep your cursed island," he snarled. "But don't think this is over." The men retreated into the storm, their boat vanishing into the raging black waves. When silence finally returned, Sophia collapsed to her knees, the torch extinguished in the rain. She wept not from fear, but from release. For the first time, she understood that she wasn't just preserving artifacts. She was preserving dignity, humanity, legacy. The next morning, as the storm cleared, the island lay battered but alive. Trees were broken, the shoreline torn apart, but the heart of what they had guarded remained intact. Sophia walked among the ruins of the camp, her hands trembling as she touched the crates. The journal still pressed close. Collins approached her, his face lined with exhaustion. "You realize what you did last night changed everything." Sophia looked out toward the horizon, where the sun burned through the clouds, gilding the waves in light. "I came here to escape my life. But this island—" She swallowed hard, her voice thick with emotion. "This island gave me a new one. I thought I was running away. Instead, I was running toward my purpose." Her words brought tears to Colin's eyes, and for a long while, they stood together in silence, watching the ocean breathe. From that day forward, Sophia changed. She was no longer the woman who doubted herself, who feared the emptiness of her old life. She became a leader not by choice, but by necessity. She took charge of every detail, from documenting artifacts to strategizing security, from writing appeals to governments to sketching designs for the island's future museum. Her voice, once hesitant, grew steady, commanding. Her eyes, once tired, now burned with a fire that never dimmed. Even the team began to look at her differently, not as the eccentric woman who bought a barren rock, but as a protector, a visionary. And yet, it wasn't pride that drove her. It was humility. Every time she held Captain Navarro's journal, she felt the weight of his words. Let it become what we dreamed. She had cried many nights on that island, cried for the sailors who never saw home again, for the lives lost to storms and greed, for her own years wasted in quiet despair. But through those tears, she found strength. The Sophia who had arrived broken and restless was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by storms, by loss, by responsibility. A woman who understood that true treasure wasn't the gold in the crates. It was the courage to fight for something greater than herself. Months passed. The storms came and went. The scavengers eventually disappeared, driven away not by force, but by something stronger, the quiet resilience of a woman who refused to surrender. Sophia Aldridge had transformed the island. Where there had once been a lonely stretch of sand and fractured timbers, there now stood an organized base, sturdy storage shelters, pathways carved with care, artifacts cataloged and protected under canvas awnings. Scholars had arrived, one by one, bringing their brushes, their journals, their reverence. What began as one woman's impulsive purchase was now becoming a sanctuary of history. The first time a group of schoolchildren stepped off a boat, Sophia stood hidden behind the trees, her hands trembling. Their laughter rang across the cliffs as they touched weathered coins and listened wide-eyed to stories of Captain Navarro. Tears blurred her vision. These children weren't just tourists, they were witnesses. The island was alive again, not through gold, but through memory. That night, sitting by the fire, Sophia opened Navarro's journal one last time. The pages, though fragile, seemed to glow in the firelight. She traced his final words with her fingertip. Let it become more than what we lost. Let it become what we dreamed. Her voice cracked as she whispered aloud, "We did it, Captain. Your dream lives." But the greatest treasure was not what lay in crates or journals. It was what lay inside Sophia herself. She thought back to the woman who had arrived months ago, exhausted and restless, searching for escape. That woman had been lost, defined by deadlines, skyscrapers, and a hollow sense of success. But this Sophia, the one forged in storms, who faced down greed, who carried the weight of history, was no longer running away. She was running toward... The governments eventually recognized Isola Perduta as a site of historical significance. Grants poured in. Universities clamored to send students. Museums wrote letters of partnership. And through it all, Sophia remained steadfast, not dazzled by recognition, but humbled by the responsibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sea in liquid fire, Collins joined her on the cliffs. His voice was soft, almost reverent. "Do you realize what you've done? You turned a barren rock into a legacy." Sophia shook her head, her smile gentle through her tears. "No. I just listened. The island was speaking all along. I only gave it a voice." For a long while, they stood together, watching the horizon. The waves whispered against the shore, as if the island itself was sighing in relief. News spread far beyond what Sophia had ever imagined. Articles called her the keeper of forgotten seas. Documentaries filmed her story. Letters poured in from strangers across the world, people who had never stepped foot on the island but felt changed just by hearing about it. Veterans who had lost comrades at sea, teachers who wanted their students to believe in history, children who sent hand-drawn pictures of ships and islands all wrote to her, saying the same thing. "Thank you for preserving what we had forgotten." And yet, Sophia never claimed ownership. She always reminded them, "This island doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to history." Her eyes often returned to the eastern cliffs, where Navarro's inscription remained etched in stone. Some days she would sit before it for hours, her hand resting on the rock, whispering her gratitude to sailors who had never heard her name. The island no longer felt silent. It sang. On the anniversary of her arrival, Sophia gathered the team, the scholars, and even the children who had come to learn. Standing before them with the journal in her hands, she spoke words that trembled but never faltered. We live in a world where it is easy to chase wealth, to measure life by what we can take. But this island has taught me something greater. True treasure isn't gold or silver. It's memory. It's courage. It's the choice to protect something not for ourselves, but for those who come after us. Captain Navarro and his crew gave their lives to preserve this legacy. Today, we honor them not by keeping the treasure, but by sharing it. As she closed the journal, a hush fell over the gathering. And then, slowly, hands began to clap. It grew until the cliffs themselves seemed to echo with applause, until Sophia felt the weight of centuries lifting from her shoulders. She smiled through tears, gazing at the children in the crowd, their eyes bright with wonder. And in that moment, she knew Navarro had been right. What had been lost was found again, not in riches, but in purpose. The island had given her more than a story. It had given her back her life. As the waves kissed the rocks below, Sophia lifted her gaze to the horizon, her heart swelling with a truth she would carry forever. The greatest treasures are not the ones you keep, but the ones you preserve for the world. Sophia's journey reminds us that the greatest treasures in life rarely glitter. She thought she was buying an escape, a forgotten rock where she could disappear. But what she found was far greater than gold. She discovered her voice, her courage, and her purpose. The shipwreck's treasure was priceless. Yes, but its true value lay in the stories of the sailors who entrusted it to time. By honoring their legacy, Sophia discovered her own. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you. Click to keep exploring with us, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe legacies are worth protecting.